So my name is Lisa Blue. I am the Director of Artificial Intelligence Strategies here at Eastern Kentucky University. And today I'm highlighting the work of Dr. Emily Zuccaro, and she's going to speak to us about implementing artificial intelligence, a workshop for higher education faculty. Emily, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and kick off the meeting?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Emily Zuccaro. I'm an associate professor in the Teaching and Learning Department at EKU. And primarily, I am a literacy and language teacher educator. So I teach a lot of classes in reading and writing and children's literature and multilingual teaching for graduate students. And Lisa invited me to talk about how I've been exploring artificial intelligence today. And so I'm going to be showing you how I've been experimenting with it in this last academic year across different ways in my teaching, assessing, collaborating with students, and that sort of thing. So for today, we're going to start off with some personal reflecting on artificial intelligence. I'll be showing you some practical applications in my teaching. We're also going to be allowing for some work time. So after we have some conversations and some demonstrations, thinking about how you can adopt or try on some things in your own teaching instructional contexts, and ending with a discussion. So we'll be starting with some breakout rooms for reflection. So for directions for the breakout room, we are naming the breakout rooms for future reference. So please note the name of your breakout room. When you're in your breakout room, please introduce yourselves. Select a scribe or someone to record ideas from your group and ready to present. And have one key takeaway to share with the larger group. Lisa, are you good now, or do you need some time?
Just about good. Keep in mind that whenever you go to your breakout rooms, I have shared with you slides and a resource guide. The instructions for this activity are in that resource guide. So if you haven't had a chance to navigate to that yet, please go ahead and do so. If you find that you have not been assigned to a breakout room, hold tight and I will send you to one. All right, so it looks like
So,
go.
sorry. So before we go into breakout rooms, these are some questions, some guiding questions to consider as you enter your breakout rooms. So, what's your current perception of artificial intelligence? Does it excite you, concern you, spark curiosity, and why? Have you experimented with AI tools? If yes, how have you used them? Personally, with productivity or planning, professionally, lesson design, feedback, assessments, so on and so forth. And then what opportunities or challenges do you see for AI in higher ed? How might it impact student learning, academic integrity, or your own teaching practices? And this is where like we get as honest as we possibly can. So this is really jumpstarting us the rest of the time together.
All right, and so I've got the breakout room set up. We will work on this activity for about 10 minutes before we come back and share the results of our breakout room. And so if you did not get assigned to a room, hold tight. I will shift you over to one. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out and we will help you out with that. All right, the rooms are open. All right, fantastic. It looks like everybody made it back. I hope you guys had great conversations. And so does anybody want to see? Oh no, Matt, you didn't see the name of your breakout room. Oops, that's unfortunate. I'll pick on somebody, maybe somebody in your group saw it. All right, so a number of people joined us during the breakout session. So again, I'm going to post the slides and the resource guide. The resource guide has links to a lot of the AIs we'll be talking about today and instructions for our workshop activities. Matt, you were in the ethics engine. Does anybody in the ethics engine want to talk about one key takeaway from their group? Feel free to just go ahead and unmute.
This is Eileen Walter. Hello. So our ethics engine group decided that we are cautiously optimistic. So, we're embracing it, but yet we're cautious about how to use it and what to do with it exactly.
All right, fantastic. Quite valid. How about the neural network? What was your takeaway from your group?
I'll speak for the group. I'm Jerry Muir from Boston University, and we had a really nice balance of faculty and course designers and instructional designers. And we found similar to the first group, things are all over the place. Some people are early adopters, others are curious, some are afraid or just exhausted from COVID. But really, there's a hesitant optimism about the efficiencies these tools can provide us as instructors, as well as the scaffolding they could provide in classes as we bring our students to get their own literacy with this.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us from Boston today. How about the algorithm alley? What was your key takeaway? And I hope you guys don't mind the cheesy names. AI did it. Anybody from the algorithm alley? All right. Anybody from any of the remaining groups? We have the cognitive co-pilots, assignment optimizer, the bias busters, the syllabus studio, the rubric refinery, the Turing test zone, and the critical thinking circuit.
I'll go.
Anybody? Yeah, please, Ray.
We were in the rubric refinery, and I think the one statement about our attitudes and perceptions was all of the above to those prompts that you offered, and how our attitudes are still changing, and they're probably changing just as quickly as AI is changing. In terms of how we've experimented with the AI tools, a lot of the typical ways, creating lesson plans, things like that. But I thought one of the interesting comments came from Jeff, who was in our group, who is new in his role to higher ed. And so he's coming in at a time where AI is what he knows. And so as he's developing courses, he's already got AI in mind, whereas some of us who have been at it a while, and even not that much longer, but it's a matter of adapting existing courses and mindsets to AI, whereas it's all just part of the game from the start. And also, too, the comment was kudos to you and Emily for opening this up to non-EKU people to get really broad, diverse perspectives.
Yes, that's the game plan, because we're all in this together, and the more broadly we can share this and work together to implement solutions, the better off we're all going to be. So thank you for that, Ray. Would anybody else like to share?
The Turing test will go, or Turing,
Thank
whatever.
you, Marcy.
I think Bill said the best word of all about AI. It's a game changer. It's revolutionizing. Somebody else in our team said it's revolutionizing education, and it totally is. And as far as how we use it, it's such a variety from everyday usage, from brainstorming to writing to course design and assessments, comparing tools to know what to do in the future. One of our colleagues said it's a challenge because we don't know, has the student done the work? Has AI done the work? We don't have a policy yet on the higher administrative aspects yet. So we're kind of in that limbo. We really, don't know where we're going yet.
Right. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because actually Emily and I are going to talk about ways that students can offer some transparency about their AI usage. A lot of schools, you probably heard about the California State University system adopting ChatGPT and offering it to about, I think it was 436,000 students and around 64,000 faculty. And so they have that enterprise solution. And I'm not sure what kind of transparency that offers, but we can talk about ways that students can document their use of AI so that they can critically reflect on it and think about what their contribution was versus how much did the AI produce. Anyone else care to share?
And the critical thinking, I think what we were talking about is that students are so far ahead of us with AI usage. And we recognize that, and just having to, really learn how to mentor them about, especially around critical thinking and analysis. And because not everything on the internet is true. As I said, when my mother-in-law finally got on the internet, she thought everything she read was absolutely truth, right? Until we finally convinced her that that wasn't the case. And so I think it's the same with students, though. I mean, I think they know that a little bit, but to just, when they're in a hurry and doing papers or whatever. So But we did
Oh.
have some folks who had played with it some, and some folks have big concerns, and there's a lot of curiosity.
Yes, fantastic. All right, we've got time for one more. Would one more group like to share? This is great information.
I can go for the bias busters.
Thank you,
Um,
Molly.
There was a lot of hesitance and curiosity in our group when it comes to AI use, and students using AI in classrooms and for homework and things.
Mhm.
One of our group members, Lynn, said that she actually uses AI with her students in a class, specifically looking at how to approach the use of AI from an ethical standpoint, and I really like that idea. And there seemed to be a kind of general theme of how can we teach students to use AI as an instrument, knowing how to give it good prompts to get good information, and also being able to check, verify those results, and use it as a tool to further critical thinking, not a crutch to lessen critical thinking.
Very good. Exactly. Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for sharing. With all of this in mind, I really want to spend some time showcasing what Emily has done. She has been working with AI in her courses for 2 semesters now. So Emily, would you care to talk to us about some practical applications that you found?
Yes, I sure can. Make sure I'm off mute. Okay. It's always a faux pas. So as Lisa mentioned, I have been exploring AI in my teaching. So I teach a children's literature class, basically every semester. But this academic year, I've really explored how to embed AI to use like with my students. And that came after like basically a summer of exploring AI resources, talking to Lisa basically like every day, like really seeking like a ton of guidance on what's happening with AI, how do we use it in my field, teacher education, literacy education, language education, undergraduate students, graduate students, like thinking about all the spheres in which I reside in. And so thinking about, and so it actually started from AI use in teaching ESL. And so I really explored a lot of ways that we can use that. And um, at the beginning of the academic year, it really started out as observational. I wanted to understand what my students knew about AI, and I had a suspicion that nobody was asking them about AI or using it in a class. And that's not to be, accusatory. I simply, because I wasn't doing it either. I wasn't asking them about AI. So it was mostly just a personal journey on, I wanted to see what they knew about AI, and I wanted them to be in an honest, productive atmosphere where we could talk about it. And then as we like progressed through the semester, we had a chance to like unpack difficult conversations about, critical thinking, creativity, our own development, our own work, our own professional identity as a future teacher in my class. So there were a lot of things that kind of led to this. And so I'm going to go over a couple of things that I did with my students, primarily in my children's literature class. So one of the biggest things was I wrote an AI course policy into my syllabus. And that was after, again, a summer of looking across like thousands of policies. There's this wonderful Google document I think Lisa put in the resource guide. It's a little overwhelming, but with some refining and just kind of like, combing through what is your philosophy and your principle and your approach to it. I think primarily stating a policy is an important part too. Like what is your approach to AI? So for me, I wanted to put in my policy that we were going to use AI tools, that it aligns with course objectives. So it aligns to the course material in my class. We're going to open up class dialogue. And I really believe that AI education is critical for our future teachers because they're entering a profession where teachers are using AI in their classrooms. And I know that because I would visit practicing teachers' classrooms and I would see them using AI in their actual classroom. So that kind of go back to like the pipeline of like, how am I preparing these undergraduates as they're about to enter a classroom where teachers are using AI? Um, so I also wrote into here about how we are going to create a class agreement. So I invited students to make a class agreement on AI tools, which I'll explain in a second. so that we could all buy into it and have kind of like a shared governance and using AI in our classroom. And I also had some kind of like disclaimers like that the material generated by AI may not be accurate, may be incomplete, problematic, and a big one that I constantly refer to is stifling independent thinking and creativity. I also really focused on you cannot submit any work as your own and you have to cite it. And so that was kind of built into our course policy with the students. As part of my exploring, I had attended this all-day training thing with AI, and there was this flag system for assignments. So kind of like a stoplight system where you have green, yellow, and red. And so you can see here, green flag is AI is allowed and it may be required. I might be requiring you to use AI in some way. Yellow flag is a limited use, so really having like a restricted or a structured way to use AI. And then red flag is AI use is absolutely not allowed, and there will be a penalty in accordance to the AI policy. So if you're violating that that policy.
So Emily, do you remember where you had that training where you were introduced to this stoplight policy?
It was actually at the Kentucky Association of Colleges for Teacher Education. So all the colleges in Kentucky convened one day and we went through all these AI platforms. And actually it was Northern Kentucky University that had some kind of stoplight system, and we adopted it at EKU in my class this way.
Can I just jump
Fantastic.
in really quick? Because I think I actually was able to, I was at that meeting. I think,
Shannon!
yeah, I think it was me.
It was you. Yes.
I only mention it because once you guys had asked some questions and you wanted to use it, we got access, or rather permission, from Chip and Travis to share it. So if it's taking a look at what NKU did and adapting or whatever, if that's helpful to anybody, I can go back and find that link and jump and put it in the chat. But I'm so glad it was helpful to you guys. That's wonderful.
Shannon, it was so nice to meet you, and you're brilliant, and like that this
Oh.
was like this was one of the biggest takeaways for me at that day. And so I always tell people it was NKU, this woman Shannon, she was amazing.
Oh,
And
that's so nice. That's so
yes,
nice.
it
I'm so
was.
glad it was helpful. Keep going. I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to say if it's helpful to
Oh.
anybody, then I can try to help out. But keep going. It's great.
Well, I'm gonna throw a stoplight on this because I've had people ask me, is this in a published work, or where does this live besides NKU's website?
There at the moment, it's shared out. They have not published it in terms of a paper or anything like that. But it's made available for anybody to use in their syllabus and shared out to others with permission as well. So yes, they did a great job with it.
Fantastic. All right. And it's also in our resource guide. So if you haven't had a chance to download that yet, that is in the chat. So go grab that and you can get your own copy of this. Thank you, Shannon.
No problem.
This was like a full circle moment for me to have Shannon here. I learned so much from her. So it was so great. But it was really important. And like, I actually talked about this at a department meeting, and a lot of faculty have adopted some system like this as well. So like they are really trying on like systems, policies, structure, something as a guideline to support students in that AI exploration. So then, so basically I had a syllabus policy, and then I had that flag system that I adopted. And then I asked students, so I went looking on the internet and I found some student AI example agreements. And so I compiled those on a slide. I think Lisa has that in the resource guide as well. And so I basically broke up students into groups, and I had them review exemplars, like what I consider to be exemplar student agreements. And I wanted them to make their own agreement. So they had to make their own agreement, and then we reviewed them. We revised if we needed to, and we voted on the one that we all agreed that we thought was necessary for our class. And that became our AI policy that was co-constructed with students for that semester. And the bottom says, like, if they had finished in their group work, they could explore AI tools related to course objectives. So I had some AI tools that they could explore related to like book recommendations, reading responses, things that were aligned to the course objectives for my class. So this, for example, this is my current class. I teach it this semester. I actually have two sections this semester. So this is my first class, student agreement, and you can see a variety of things here. So they're talking about it using it responsibly to support learning, not submitting AI work as your own, disclosing with putting the prompt, work given, put it in your own words, making sure it's, fair, correct, unbiased, it follows the rules of the class. It should not hinder their ability or quality of work, making sure that the links or lists are reputable. I also want to point out like having equal access to the platform. So I've only encouraged students to use the free versions of AI engines, not paying for anything. So we only use the free versions of anything in our class. And then ultimately having some personal accountability. So I'm responsible for my actions and use while on the platform. And then student B, a little, not so many ideas here, but still thinking about when specified by professor, thinking about I'm not turning in work that's not my own. I need to make sure I review for mistakes. If it's not harmful to myself or others, I'll review it for bias and making sure that we have the necessary skills and knowledge to use it effectively. So I think one of the biggest things, and I'm going to show you examples of student work later, but I think the biggest thing I want to discuss right now is like, in my breakout room, the Bias Busters, great names, Lisa. I really appreciated the discussion of discomfort, like how we're a little uncomfortable with, students have to have the necessary skills. They're in this developmental stage where they have to be learning how to do these things on their own without the tools of AI. And I recognize that and I understand that completely. I also think that this comes from a teacher preparation standpoint, is that they're about to enter a profession where they're responsible for like they're living in a world where AI is there. And I feel for me as a teacher educator, it's my responsibility to help them learn how to harness these tools in a way that's effective, productive, that they learn how to use it so it doesn't stifle their creativity or critical thinking and that sort of thing. And they're already talking about important ideas like bias and, making sure we're not causing harm to others, checking for reputable resources and that sort of thing. So, and speaking very honestly, my students told me that I was the first professor who ever talked about AI in the class. And I was surprised by that, but also, it's also that's nice feedback for me. And honestly, this whole thing is like generative. It's like even talking to students is part of the process, right? So that was just a really big point for me, was that creating an environment where we could talk about artificial intelligence and not becoming a place where I want to be like accusing them or surveilling them. I want to have a place where we're all agreeing to use it responsibly and then learning from it. Okay, so I'm going to explain a big part of my children's literature class is we read whole class novels, and I asked them to create a reading response. And I asked them to do visual reading responses, mostly because a lot of them don't get chances to have creatively responding to a text that way. So I like to have them do visual responses. And so my students in this class drew upon Canva and ChatGPT. Lisa, are we okay in the chat at all? I just want to make sure the chat's okay.
Yeah, we're doing fine. We did have one question, but we'll address it a little bit later.
Okay, great. So this is the first example. So Maisie Chen's Last Chance is a novel where a Chinese girl and her family have to go support her grandma, and they run a restaurant, and they're facing discrimination and racism, and an important like artifact to their family is stolen, so they have to figure out what happened to it. So this was done in Canva, and you'll see that I require certain guidelines for this response. So I have them do, they have to choose a border that goes around the paper from the book. They have to have connections, why someone wants to read it, quotes, references, definitions that are particular to the actual text, color choices, and that sort of thing. So I want to point your attention to this bear statue right here. So this person asked, create an image of a bear statue. And what came back was pretty intense looking. And she decided that she wasn't really happy with that image. So she talked to ChatGPT again and said, can you make it 7 foot tall and friendly? Because it was an artifact that was like important to a family. And so she considered friendly to be more of a characteristic for that bear. So she embedded that image into her image. And then actually that was the thing that was stolen from the restaurant was the bear statue. Starfish is another novel, beautiful novel. It's a verse novel, and it's about a girl who struggles with like body positivity, and she likes to lay in her pool and starfish. And starfish is a very like recurring theme in this book. And so you can see the requirements of the assignment are still here. She has connections, the reason why someone should read it, definitions, a quote from the book that repeats around the border. So she's adhering to the guidelines of the assignment, but she used Canva to create this really nice, meaningful background and also enhancing the creativity of our one-pager. So she asked Canva to create this image of a girl looking at a starfish, and then her reflection's also a starfish. So in the original submission here, you just see the reflection here, but in the product, she actually has the starfish over her reflection in the pool. And that's really meaningful in a symbolism way. So like I can tell that the student understood how the main character sees herself as a starfish and how important that was, along with everything else she put on her one-pager. So I can tell a student is reading the novel, interacting with the novel, responding it to a way that is meaningful, and AI has not taken away her ability to do the assignment. It's actually just enhanced the image that she may or may not have been able to do on her own.
Emily, we have a couple of quick questions.
Yes,
And I meant to ask this when we were looking at Class A and Class B, because I know the factor. How many students are in each of these classes?
Class A has 13 and Class B has 29.
And we think that probably had something to do with the granularity of the responses for Class A, because they had a lot more commentaries compared to Class B, right?
Yes.
And then is this the free version of Canva that they're using to generate these images?
Yes.
Very good. Fantastic. All right, thank you. Those are all the questions.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure like tried Pro for 14 days. So I'm pretty sure these are the free versions. I know of their own free will, some students paid for Canva, but I know the majority of them don't pay for anything because they cannot afford it. And I did never ask them to do anything. And again, I asked them just to submit it as observational. I wanted to see how would they use it? So there was not really a strict, this is how you must use it kind of thing. I was really trying to figure out how are you using it? And so this is another one, Song for a Whale. So she put whale and girl, and you can see that this generates a beautiful backdrop for her to put all of her other assignment requirements on. So the border, the connection, why someone wants to read it, 2 definitions, some quotes, and that sort of thing. So students are following the directions of the assignment. AI is not doing the thinking for them. It's just creating maybe a more aesthetically pleasing, a more meaningful, or a more deeply revealing understanding of the book and its themes and its symbolism and that sort of thing. This is really interesting to me. This student actually went to ChatGPT to ask for language to put into Canva. So it said, what should I tell an AI image generator to create an image from the book When Stars Are Scattered, another novel that we read. And so ChatGPT gave a pretty detailed description of the 2 main characters, and there they are in her Canva creation. So, so she used both ChatGPT and Canva to kind of help her with her assignment. And again, not taking away from her understanding it from the book. Some students did it by hand. They didn't use Canva as their platform for creating. So this person did it on her tablet, reading A Song for a Whale. And this is about a deaf and hard of hearing protagonist who likes to restore vintage radios. And so this student asked, what's the most likely model of the radio from her description in the book? And so the ChatGPT responds back to her about and what it looks like. Very specific description. Distinctive cathedral shape, popular design from the 1930s, a round top, wooden casing, iconic large dial, so on and so forth. What I love about this next interaction is the student asked, what quote tells you that? So she challenged AI, ChatGPT, to say, where are you finding this? You know, how could you tell? And so that's where the engine comes back and says, you know, there's not really a direct quote, but it's suggested. It's a classic older model. And so it's suggested these are the right descriptions for this radio. So that was really interesting. And that goes back to also with comprehension and like visualization. So this is a traditional novel. There's no pictures, it's not a graphic novel. So asking what kind of radio the person's restoring, this is a nice visual image and also lends itself to a deeper comprehension of the novel.
We have another.
Oh, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
How can you know if they read the original or if they had ChatGPT summarize or use its creativity instead of their own?
That's where a lot of the connections come from, because you can tell that their connection is actually their own. A lot of the time it doesn't sound, and this goes into a lot of other AI conversations, like Lisa has mentioned, like burstiness in ChatGPT. So like and sometimes ChatGPT uses very like showy, large language. So I can tell basically from their connections too, like here on the screen, for example, this student is talking about Violets Are Blue has themes of like addiction and parent separation. And she has a very like personal connection to a family member who had addiction problems. So a lot of the times their connections reveal that they connect immediately to it. Um, and in previous times, I've actually seen their screenshots where some students had a hard time connecting to the novel, which is not surprising to me. We can't connect to everything we read, which is why we have to have a large variety of texts. And they would ask ChatGPT, how could somebody connect to this book? And then they would make their own personal connection. So they wouldn't make, go ahead, sorry.
You also mentioned, these are all picture books. And so students are physically going to the library resource center and checking these out also.
Yes, these are all physical copies of books.
Right. So maybe that helps as well.
Yeah, and you know, importantly, this one pager, for example, not two one pagers look the same. Like they don't ever look the same. And that's the whole point. They're alternative ways of understanding how my students are interacting with the novel. So like they never look the same. And because of the guidelines. So they might choose the same kind of quote because that's actually to be predicted. Sometimes something resonates with the students so much. Like people who read Violets Are Blue, this quote, "People are messy," that was like, they were like, oh my gosh, that was the best quote ever because people are messy, you know? And so we talk about it in class and it becomes very evident, you know, who has read it and that sort of thing. And also it goes back to our AI course policy. You know, this was a green flag assignment, so I wanted them to use AI and they document it. And I'm trying to lead with an environment of trusting that they're using it in the ways that we have talked about, and that I want to make sure we're using it in a way that's like respectful, ethical, not stifling our creativity and that sort of thing. And again, there are other components of the assignment that show me that they're reading it.
All right. So you just opened it up for the next question. Do you discuss the ethics of using AI generated imagery and copyright issues?
You know what? I do not yet, but we talk about copyright, and that sort of thing. This semester, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit later too, is like, this was the first semester. And so as I progress through my learning and my own understanding, so now I'm trying to teach more about AI because right away, whoever said that students know more than we do, that was quite on the nose. So like, I think for me, it was like surveying and understanding in an assignment how people knew how to use AI. And now I'm trying to pivot towards like, okay, I'm still trying to understand how you understand AI, but I'm also going to try to teach you as I understand what you know about AI and that sort of thing.
Fantastic. Melissa has a question.
Yes, thank you so much. This is really super fun for me because I teach in a professional program, you know, preparing future RNs, registered nurses. So I would think, and what I know about AI so far is that it just frees us up to just spend more time with our students in many ways. So if you got the impression that this kid never read the book and I know very little about in literature world. I'm like I said, I'm a midwife and a nurse, right? They did it the night before, they panicked, whatever, they submitted something, and you're suspicious. I would think it would be great to say, hey, let's come on in and talk to me about your assignment, right? And then it
Yeah.
would be not accusatory, but just like, hey, what's going on in your life? Because I want you to learn and succeed. And I just think it just is a launch pad, to be able to stop worrying about the kids, just the students, just letting it do the work for them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that idea of a launch pad. So it's always a place for conversation and class dialogue too. And again, like there are components of the assignment that, and I've taught this class, like 10 times. So, I have become so familiar with, and some undergrads do it the morning of. These are middle grade novels. One is a graphic novel. You could probably read in an hour. It's not meant to be these like lengthy tomes of, and so for me, it's like it's more of like the connections, even their important words. You can see on this one, the important words for addiction and makeup. If I see the same words over and over again, that kind of tells me that maybe it's been generated by something else. So even the diversity of their definitions also gives me like, okay, and their quotes are not all the same. Some are, but that's also because some of those quotes in those novels are purposely written to resonate with people. So like if you're in a book club, you have quotes that you might share and you're like, "Oh, I love that quote. Oh, I love that quote." That's not inauthentic. That's like a real world thing where a quote from a text is resonating with you. So to me, it's like if I'm seeing a lot of copied and pasted responses that repeat over and over and over again, or there's not really a personal connection, that's where I kind of step in and talk to my students in that way. Am I okay to keep going, Lisa? I'm not sure if there's any more questions.
One more question. Are they all getting all books or choosing their own? So how are they choosing their books?
3 are whole class novels. So I chose those books, and then 2 are choice novels. So they had a list of 5 books, and they chose one from a category and one from another. So one was like verse or poetry novels, and so they would choose one from poetry and one from like a multicultural selection of texts. And we have them at the Learning Resource Center at EKU. We have them at the bookstore. The local libraries have them. So a lot of them, and actually a lot of students prefer still to read like a physical copy of a book.
Yeah.
So,
Fantastic. All right, that's all the questions for now. Thank you.
okay. I love it. This is Violets Are Blue, so she did it by hand, and she asked ChatGPT, part of the online children's literature section is like thinking about how like building repertoires for things, like finding ways for text selection and resources related to text. And so she asked ChatGPT for resources for how someone feels. So there was like a feelings wheel, a mood tracker app, journaling, games. And this is from her reflection that she looked at an emotion chart from positive psychology for how to identify emotions and navigate them. And Ren is the main character from Violets Are Blue. Ren deals with a lot of different emotions throughout the book because so much is happening to her. So a lot of like connected thinking, a lot of like extended thinking, and she might even think about this as a future classroom teacher for like maybe collecting resources for emotions related to topics in that book like addiction or family separation and that sort of thing. Another Violets Are Blue was done with Canva. And you can see she has secrets all over the border, some connections. She has some books to read for children with family changes. And she actually asked ChatGPT for books on parent separation for children. So while one person asked about feelings, this person asked about more books on parent separation for children. And you can see that there's a list generated here, which then led to a conversation about checking if those are actually books or not. Because we have had experiences with ChatGPT that those are actually not books. That's happened before. So, so yeah, thinking about all of those things with the one-pager assignment. And then I had an example where like this is an example of when to intervene or support students, like you mentioned before, is like when to have that like launch conversation or when to pull them aside kind of thing. So I did have one student who copied and pasted like verbatim from ChatGPT to their assignment. So she had asked, why would someone want to read this novel? And then ChatGPT gave them the answer, and she just copied and pasted the entire thing on her one pager. So I talked to her after class and I was like, hey, so we had a conversation about like, the generating and the submitting and maybe in between the revising and making it more of her own sort of thing.
How did you know? You just knew?
Oh,
You
I
could
just
just tell. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing too. This is kind of like the experience is like the more you use it, the more you can observe what the product or the output is from ChatGPT or other engines. And so you can kind of be on the lookout for like all of the language, a lot of the features that kind of keep recycling over and over again. And again, the recommendation, so why someone would want to read this book, typically it is very personal. So like when I read student submissions, their recommendation, like, oh, I think my mom would love this book because it sounds so personal. Like you can understand why they're making that recommendation. And I could tell this person copied and pasted. It sounded so detached, formal, like it was not actually particular to a person reading it. So it sounded like someone was just like copying and pasting. And we had a conversation about it and we moved on from it. And it never happened again. So her recommendations were very personalized and that sort of thing.
All right, I've got two important follow-up questions.
Yes.
The first one is my own. How did you broach the subject with the students?
Oh, let me think.
Because emails are scary. I mean,
I
did you?
definitely, this was a face-to-face class. So I was afforded the fortune of having face-to-face. And I know in my breakout room, the bias busters, someone talked about like the face-to-face and the online nature of teaching is so different.
Yes.
So keep in mind, these are face-to-face students. And by the time this took place, I believe it was like in the middle of a semester. So I had built enough rapport, which also is important because like they knew that like we had talked about AI enough that we could talk about AI in a way that wasn't like I was accusing them or I was punishing them or I was, that kind of thing. So I simply asked her if I could talk to her and I was like, I noticed on your reading response, it looks like you copied and pasted just word for word your recommendation for the book. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I thought that was okay. And I was like, well, and like, part of our policy is like you can't really submit something that's not really your own. And you didn't do anything to revise the wording of this recommendation. And that was it.
So you feel like the student responded in a positive fashion? You don't feel like it damaged the relationship to bring this up?
I don't think so. And I never saw it again because I also kept looking for it because I was trying to make sure she understood to revise it and personalize it for her own. And I never saw any like copy and pasting like word for word
Right.
after that.
Right. And then we have another question in the chat. Ben Fried, bless you for this question because it is the question. This is great for in-person with no multiple choice questions. How can you tell if the student is using AI in an online multiple choice exam? And Emily, I don't expect you to have the answer to this.
Well,
He goes on to say, in other words, how can you construct multiple choice questions in an AI world?
Well, I believe he was in my Bias Busters group. And I believe he was the one that posed the face-to-face online dilemma. This is primarily my stance is I don't administer multiple choice because I do a lot of like personalized assessments where like they have to create something and they're not answering questions. So I am probably not the best person to answer that. But I do think in our workshop time, you probably could pose that question and figure out a way. Maybe there's other people who've had that issue come up and talk about it because we're going to have workshop time to hopefully unpack some ideas from this.
And then Jessica, do you want to unmute? You say you have an idea for that. Jessica says she's changed her offline. Go ahead.
Yeah, I forgot this wasn't a webinar and that we can like
Yes,
please talk. Please talk.
I hate webinars for that reason. Please talk to us.
So I've explicitly changed the multiple choice questions to reading comprehension while I explicitly say, according to page 201 in your book, which of the following is, you know, I teach music. So like, which of the following is not a description of this piece? And so literally they can't, I mean, they could go to Google, but I can't guarantee Google or ChatGPT are going to have the correct answer. And even if they do, it doesn't matter because I'm asking them to confirm what they read in the book, which also has the nice added advantage of I'm not saying this is the ultimate answer for all time. I'm just getting you to confirm you understand what's in the textbook, and then they have to open the ebook to do it. So it's been win-win when we've changed it to a task, because ChatGPT can't do tasks, right? It can't transform or interpret, and it doesn't have access to the textbook to give them the answer anyways. But even if it did, they would still have to read ChatGPT's answer and make a decision. So even if they did cheat, it's still the target is reading comprehension rather than memorizing knowledge and fact, because many of you work in the humanities, right? Everything's subjective interpretation anyway. So it's been a game changer to change the style of the questions, because I can't ask them to memorize anything in an online class anyways. So just kind of upped it to,
Well, and just anything we can do to drag students back to the textbook where they should be anyway is a plus in my book. Shannon says she does something similar. And then Ranjana said the quiet part out loud. Thank you, Ranjana, for broaching this subject. Ben, I hate to break it to you, but there are actually web browser extensions that float over the top of our learning management systems. And for a small monthly fee, they will complete Canvas, Blackboard, D2L quizzes for students. I've been told that they're not particularly efficient, but we also have agentic AI. So students can create these custom chatbots, even a fleet of custom chatbots to go in and perform all the duties as expected as a student in our LMS now. And so I think it hinges critically on focusing on that relationship-rich education and fostering that student's intrinsic motivation to learn and master the material so they can be the best practitioner that they can be once they've got that degree in hand and they're out in the field doing the work. Melissa, you had your hand up, please.
Yeah, no, just Emily's class you're setting positive tone, like respectful learner, and very busy undergrads. And you know, it's human nature. You wait till the last minute, you panic. I only give online multiple choice exams, open book for my testing. They have to take a national exam to become a nurse. That's 100% online, multiple choice and all that good stuff. So I really think if you set the equation, you know, this is your practice, this is your life, this is your learning, you know, and stop being the police person to a certain degree, or else, you know, I just put it out there. I said, I trust you. I want you to become an awesome nurse. I said, this is not how it's going to work. I mean, you all could just go into ChatGPT, just recognizing it, because it's an assistant. And I really just love Emily. I could tell if I was in Emily's class, I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to get on ChatGPT and just like blast out something. And then, you know, if I did, and then the word gets out, because I'm sure that student went to all her friends on her WhatsApp and said, I had to go meet with this perfect, you know, they're not going to want to do it. But, you know, initially it's difficult because they're, you know, they're so young, right? We're getting older, they're getting younger. And, you know, it's just about like the ownership of learning to a certain degree. And maybe I don't have to worry about it as much, because they can go through my program, get a bachelor's degree, and never be able to practice as a nurse, because they're not going to pass that highly proctored, highly sensitive licensure exam.
Yes, they've got to do their dosage calculations. They can't have ChatGPT in their pocket doing it for them. I'm right there with you. One more question, Emily. Do your students submit their dialogue records with AI as part of the assignment?
Yep.
Fantastic.
It's a requirement. So I mandate that, like, when they use AI, they had to submit whatever they did with AI. And they all do. And we all talk about it in class too. So we usually do like a gallery walk after they do their reading responses. So we all see like all the products, and they leave post-it notes on people's responses, like, wow, I love how you did this, or asking a question and that kind of thing. And so they get to see, which is part of the generative part of the reading response, they get to see how others arranged color, images, text, that kind of thing, and then ultimately design this thing. And then we talk about how they talk to AI and like what happened. And some folks were like, I asked AI to do this and it looked like terrible, so I just decided to do it this way. You know, like it wasn't what I wanted. And that kind of thing.
All right. I see that Ben was raising his hand. Do you want to unmute? And then we need to go ahead and move on.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd also noticed that, I guess my other question that goes along with this is that I'm generally in a gen ed course, and there's no assumed connection with the material. And the temptation for someone who is unfamiliar with the material is so great. Likewise, I've also read various articles suggesting that, yeah, student culture may have changed already, suggesting, yeah, but I can get done with this thing in terms of, the venue of, let's say, an online kind of thing. So I am trying the friendly talk approach, and the policies and all that sort of stuff. But invariably, I had to show some of my fellow instructors how quickly in 15 seconds I could just copy and paste a multiple choice question from online and get an answer that was correct and not have to worry about reading the whole thing.
This is just a suggestion from my working with students and trying to build rapport on AI is maybe asking your students, like, how would you use AI with this class to see how they're already doing it, to construct some kind of like, how can we agree to use it in a way? Because I think sometimes, let me tell you this, the first day of class, before I introduced the student agreements, I said, we'll be talking about AI this semester. And it was like crickets. Not a single one talked. No one said a thing. The next class, I was like, today we're doing class agreements on AI. I'd like to know what you understand about AI, read these evaluations, blah, blah, blah. Of 27 students, all 27 said we all use it. And they actually talked about it that day. So on the first day, it was very like teacher directed, like talking about AI. And the next time it was like, I'd like you to tell me or show me or be a part of a conversation. And then everyone started talking again. And that already created an environment of like, I'm not trying to accuse you. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand how you use it in the context of this class, because how you use it in my class is different than someone else's class, like Benjamin's class. Like, and their articulation of how to use it, like in my class or Benjamin's class, is revealing their ability to use it. If they can employ different skills at different times for different contexts for different reasons, it actually shows how adept they are. And that's actually what we do already. Like we already asked them to build toolkits and repertoires of, strategies and toolkits to like interact with different subject matter, different classes. And, I know people were up in arms about Wikipedia, like for a long time, because like Encyclopedia Britannica was like, the source of knowledge, and now it's more constructed, across different users and that kind of thing. Google Suite was a problematic for a lot of people when it came out. So like, it's kind of like we either run with it or we're run over by it. And so I'd like to think that we can, this is my personal stance, is like I'd like to sit alongside my students and talk to them in a way, because they're adults, even though they don't always act like it, like they're adults who will be a professional, in a couple of years. And I need to sit alongside them and be like, what do you know? I have a 16-year-old and I asked him about AI. He's like, it's like Google. And I'm like, okay, we need to talk more. But it was like no one had ever asked him before. And now he knows that I talk about AI with my students. And so he talks to me about AI stuff more freely. It's not so taboo. It's not so like, oh my gosh, like, so I think removing that barrier of like, I don't know, like the hierarchy of teacher student, like trying to get you kind of thing, but without minimizing the real reality of they need to think critically, they need to think creatively, they need to have these skills. We need to learn how to employ these things, and give them the tools to like have autonomy and agency as they're doing all these things. That's my personal soapbox moment for the day.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So Emily, I'm curious. You are an amazing instructor, first of all. But second of all, Do you feel like your teaching has shifted from a product-based pedagogical approach to a process-based pedagogical approach? Meaning, do you find yourself assessing like the final output that the student shows you? Or are you scaffolding these assignments in such a way that students have multiple touch points so you can catch them if they start over relying on AI?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, from from last semester to this semester, I've definitely become more like process based, because in the past I would ask them just to submit their one pager and like be done with it. And now I'm really acutely aware of what they're turning in with their stuff, you know, so like how are they using it in this respect and that kind of thing. So I definitely have picked up on more of like, I want to see screenshots, I want to see some kind of documentation, some evidence of revision. Like we've talked about revision, like having things in bold or italics or one color font and the other color font. And like I did that before AI, the advent of
Yeah.
AI, really, you know, like I asked students, like we'd go through revisionary processes and I asked them to document like revision, like so I could obviously see they were revising something.
Right.
So it's just in the scope that they're now submitting screenshots or, you know,
Mhm.
ways of documenting how they're talking to an AI engine. And I don't really tell them who to talk to or how to talk to it. And that's why my teaching's kind of pivoting to is like teaching them how to use it more in a refined way. Because the last semester was
Yes.
like observational. What do they know? You know, and I'm
Yes.
still understanding what they know. Now I'm trying to shift how I can teach them how to harness it in a way that's more productive and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent way to describe it because maybe that first semester you try some assignments and you just observe how students react to it. You know, I always talk about we can build the most beautiful assignment, but if students, take a shortcut or this desire path, going the shortest distance between point A and point B, sometimes it's difficult to anticipate that. And so I think it's fine to create an AI-based assignment one semester, see how it goes, and then to refine it. That's what the best do. And so I don't want to take much time, but I think that what we're seeing is that there's this general shift. First of all, talk about AI, allow students to use AI and teach them what AI use in a responsible fashion looks like. Your stoplight system is amazing for helping students understand the amount of AI to use on an assignment. But I also think we're seeing this shift to this process-based pedagogical approach to encourage that responsible AI use. So teaching them about AI, but also taking this process-based approach, I think is our two-pronged approach to making sure students are using it well. And, you've talked about students critically evaluating their AI outputs rather than just, copy paste. No, that's not acceptable. That's not going to work for this class. We're taking time to reflect on their learning, maintaining that academic integrity, not claiming the AI output is their own. But you're also helping students kind of focus on how they learn, not just, here's the final product, assess it. No, how are we interacting with this material and how do we generate that final response? And so I really appreciate how your courses have demonstrated that. So for anybody struggling with appropriate AI usage in their courses, just keep this one in mind. And I'll get off that soapbox.
Yeah, no, it's good soapboxes to be on. And one thing is like the student that I mentioned where she's like, well, I went to AI, it didn't give me what I wanted. And so I said, why? And like that was like a further conversation. It didn't really stop like, oh, okay. I was like, well, I didn't give you what you wanted. I was curious about like the interaction of the output and like and I was like, what did you say to the AI engine? So it was like a lot of like things were like, those are all interactional. And again, it builds more background knowledge for myself as an educator to know like what her thought process was as she was talking to it and that kind of thing. So like, um, so yeah, so that's really a big part of how I'm using it with my students. And I don't know, Lisa, if I should just like keep going through all my slides. This is such a good conversation. So I don't want to.
It's such a good conversation. I hate to truncate it, but let's go ahead and talk about how you simplified your grading process with AI.
Okay.
Let's at least cover the content we had planned.
Okay. I love this talk, by the way. It's like this is why I want to keep doing this. It's
I
so
told you this was going to be an amazing conversation today.
Yeah,
I'm
it's so
here for
fun.
this.
Okay, so I also, in my endeavors with AI, I also was looking at, I think it was someone in the Bias Busters group who mentioned, was it Gary? Someone using about justification, like going to it and like, so you revised it after you did it. So like there are things that exist as educators and instructors that like we have to do. We have to grade and give feedback and all that stuff. And like, I'm gonna be real, I have 2 toddlers and a teenager, and I'm a coordinator. So like I am like constantly looking for ways to make my time more efficient. And so I explored using AI for grading, and I talked to Lisa about it, and so I feel good about talking about this with you. So looking at how I could use AI to help me grade in an ethical way and a way that respects like the whole instructional cycle of giving feedback and me being a part of it and not just giving it to AI and being done with it. So, are any of you familiar with Claude?
I see some hands and some nods.
Okay, great. So I use Claude. I feel like I should have a French accent when I talk about Claude. And so I like the idea of Claude because, again, I'm using a limited free plan. So I was only limited to a certain amount of language, like a language limit every day. And so I like Claude because you can upload documents and images as part of your interaction with the ChatGPT or the engine. So I taught a graduate class in the fall, and it was a culturally linguistically responsive class. And the students were responsible for doing a case study with a student who was a multilingual learner, and they had to submit parts of their case study every week. So I saw their case study every week. There were 4 parts, like part A, B, C, and D. So they submitted part A, then part B, C, and so forth. And so I was constantly in like a revisionary cycle with them. So I would read it, I give them feedback. And so by the time they turned it in at the end of the term, it was an 8-week term, I pretty much knew what their case study was going to look like. Whether or not they were actually receiving the revision, like they're actually revising it and that kind of thing. So I had a good idea of what most of my case studies would look like. And so basically, this is the rubric that I had already made myself. So I made this rubric by myself. I did not ask anybody to help me with it. And I have part A, B, C, and D across accomplished, developing, and beginning. And so I basically asked Claude, I uploaded the rubric, I took a case study, I de-identified it. So I removed any identifying factor because it was a case study. So there are going to be names, a school, so on and so forth. So I removed any de-identifying characteristics in that document. And I asked it to score and provide feedback on the case study using the attached rubric. So it gave me a score, and I clicked on this document, this little icon right here, and it popped up here. So by part A, part B, part C, part D, and it gave me some feedback and some considerations for future versions of the assessment, and then gave me a kind of like a summative feedback statement with a score. So, and then I kept asking, so I asked it to do it again. So I de-identified a case study, and then I uploaded it. And notably, this gave me more text the second time I submitted something. So it gave me a score, it gave me the key strengths, areas for potential improvement. And if I clicked on this document, it broke it down by A, B, C, and D with the final summative narrative back to the student. So importantly, after I talked to Claude about it, I went back and I reviewed it myself. So I did not just copy and paste from Claude. I went back and I copied and pasted Claude's feedback on a document, and then I left it alone and I read it with a rubric. And so I basically went back and forth between what I thought was okay and what Claude was doing. And so, and then I revised, and sometimes I revised it a lot, but sometimes there was some good feedback. One of the key points from Claude was that some students were including a lot of quantitative data, or they weren't very detailed in their quantitative data. So they had to take like student assessment data in their case study. And a lot of them talked about it pretty superficially. They didn't really actually talk about like, they didn't have any tables. And that was part of, the assignment was they had to have very specific pieces of data to talk about. And so Claude was able to help me kind of create these narrative templates that I ultimately revised over and over and over again to give back to the student. And so when I talked to Lisa about this.
Well, that's a good question right there. Did you find that the feedback was consistently accurate based on your context and rubric?
For the most part, yes.
Okay, fantastic. And does that take so much more time than just pushing your way through and grading it yourself?
Um, it did and it didn't. Also because I like AI is a personal learning thing for me. Like I'm trying to understand it more. So I was willing to like explore how it worked, which I knew was more time.
Mhm.
But then at the end, working with Claude and going back and forth, like taking the revision, revising it, the narrative feedback, revising it, reading the students' case studies, like it was actually making, I already had the narrative templates created that I had revised already. And then
Sure.
I read every case study already. So I read the case studies after seeing that. So I still was doing the grading, but I had more of like a word bank or an idea to look
Mhm.
for and that kind of thing. Um, and so talking to Lisa, these were some like best practices with grading was like, if you, so I did not generate with AI the rubric, but if you do, making sure you generate it and then verify rubrics with like student learning outcomes, de-identify the assessment, score according to the rubric, read over, revise the feedback to the student, and then being transparent with assessing with AI with your students.
That brings up another fantastic question. So Sherry asked about almost an hour ago. I didn't forget Sherry. Um, How do you think faculty and staff should address transparency of AI use with their students? She noted that she had a dean or department chair that said in the footnote of their emails that the email may have been written with AI.
Mm-hmm.
So from your own point of view, how transparent are you with students about your use of AI in the course?
I mean, I'm pretty obvious from the beginning. Mostly because again, it's like a personal thing. I approach it from like, I'm learning how to use it. So I'm being obvious that I'm using it in a way that's aligned to my role in this class. So like,
Mhm.
how are you using it aligned to your role in this class kind of thing? And so like, I think that's where a lot of negotiation and talking comes from it too. And so I think, um, you know, when it come down to this, it's not really surprising because I was like, I'm using AI. Like I'm curious, I've written course objectives. I've been a teacher for like at least 16 years. And so I've written objectives like forward and backwards. And sometimes I have
Sure.
ChatGPT help me because, I already know how to do it. So but this was really interesting for how to use Claude. And I could only use it, and it was good because it was good for me because I couldn't use it for every case study because of, first of all, the limit. It was free and there was a limit. But it gave me a framework for the look fors when I was grading. And outside of using Claude, I did see a lot of my students were not specifying like data. They were speaking very broadly in it. Which told me they were not responding to the revision I had sent previously in weeks before
Right.
when I was like, hey, you're not being specific with your data. I need to see it in the final product. So I could tell who was like actually responding to my revision suggestions and who wasn't.
Right. So how early in the semester do you tell them about your AI use? Do you disclose it in the syllabus or do you just talk about it day one?
This was an online class, so I think I talked about it in a video that I recorded.
Okay.
It's in the syllabus, but I think I talked about it in a video that I post every week too.
Okay, fantastic. Here's another question from Erica. She works in communication and journalism, which has been really hard hit by the AI. I talk to people from School of Communications almost daily about what they're seeing with their students. Erica asked, would there be issues with student work being online, almost published, by using AI to grade? Many student projects in our program are meant to be published somewhere once complete. Are we setting up things to self-plagiarize when they go to publish their work?
I don't really have an answer for that, to be honest.
Sounds like a good question to talk about over a coffee sometime.
Yeah, and that's why I like these talks with like people who are not just in like my department or my college because like
Mhm.
this is very specific to what I do in teaching and learning, preparing teachers. So like um they don't go publish their case studies technically. They
Right.
they do it to like navigate the course content and become more proficient via the outcomes. So they don't really like, they don't
Yeah,
publish their case study. So,
sure.
but that's definitely relevant in that field. So I'd
Yeah.
love to put it further. I don't really have an answer for that though, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, Eric, I'm sorry to table that one, but yeah, this is a seems to be unique to schools of communication. I can actually put you in, if you email me, lisa.blue@eku.edu, it's on the title slide. I can put you in touch with some directors of schools of communication across the country that might be able to help you with that question. All right, fantastic. Let's see. I feel like I had another question, but let's go ahead and keep rolling because we've got about 9 minutes left.
I really wanted people to talk in breakout rooms again though. Are you like, what do you feel about that?
Um,
I'm
we could
confused.
I don't think we have the time. We've only got 8 minutes left.
Okay.
I know, so sorry.
No, this is all good. This is all a great conversation. I just really wanted to hear more people in like breakout rooms. But so like
No.
this is the last thing I'll talk about was like so the enhancing assignments with ChatGPT and Canva was really in fall, and my students are doing it again this spring. But now from an observational standpoint, I'm going to be more intentional about like teaching them how to use an AI engine to do something. So this is like to boost student engagement. So back to my children's literature class, they do 2 group presentations and they do one over an author, illustrator, or poet. So they basically like research that person's life, you know, how they become Jacqueline Woodson, how they became Jason Reynolds, like all these different beautiful lived bodies of work and their body of work. So becoming familiar with all of their work. And then they tell us the class about it. And because again, in that class, we're building their repertoire of texts. And so via an author, illustrator, poet stance is one of them. Another one is genre. So like biography, graphic novels, informational texts. And so they pick a genre and they have to create a bibliography of those texts to produce to their students or fellow classmates. So I haven't really introduced anything with AI for this, but that was kind of where I was going next was how could I support group collaboration in projects? So I went to AI Exploria. You can see right here, AI Exploria. And I typed in group collaboration because I was just curious what's out there. And AI Exploria is like a search engine for all the AI engines. And you can select a category for like what's the kind of thing you're looking for. And I chose presentations because they ultimately give a presentation. That's like the product. So I was curious about what's out there. And so I clicked on all of these to see what was, you know, what was first of all free and what was actually going to do what I wanted it to do. And I found magic slides, which I really liked. And so it's the idea that you can enter a topic, a YouTube URL, PDF, or a text to get a beautiful PowerPoint in seconds. And so I don't want this magic slides to make the entire presentation for my students. That's not the point of this. What I wanted to do is maybe give the students an outline for their presentation because an outline's not really taking away from they still have to do all the work of interview or reviewing all the body of work of books and they have to still research the person's life. And so it's not necessarily hurting them, it's just giving them an outline. And I know my students have told me that they often ask for an outline before they start something. So I was trying to give them another way to do an outline in the context of our group presentations. So I asked it to give me the career of Jacqueline Woodson, one of my favorite children's authors. And so it leads you through like different templates and it'll tell you what's like, you know, free. You have credits here. So I had 3 credits when I signed up. There's some premium things, so you can only have like 5 or 10 slides, which by the way is perfect. I don't need that many slides. And I can add slides outside of that. So I went for the short version of 5 slides. And then it prepared my content and it didn't take very long. And this is what it gave me. So it gave me like the title, which obviously can be revised, about Jacqueline Woodson, the life and achievements of a literary icon, which is completely right. And then it gives me a table of contents or an outline for how the presentation can go. And then major works. And so, for example, this might be a place where I talk to my students because I don't want them to turn this in. This is AI generated, but there's an autobiographical account that beautifully captures Woodson's childhood. Well, that's Brown Girl Dreaming. And so I'd want them to like I don't want you to turn this page in. I want you to take this off, and this is where you do the research yourself. And so in that conversation, we're like negotiating, like, okay, you used magic slides to help you get started, but now it's up to you to go do the research yourself. And that's where the documentation also comes into play. They got to submit screenshots of where they went to go looking for, you know, her books and how they use magic slides. And also, this might be a yellow flag assignment where they don't have to use it. So that's that for the magic slides. I don't know, Lisa, do you want to keep talking about this next part?
Yeah, very quickly, I can go through this. So if you've sat through any of my presentations in the past, we've talked about documenting AI utilization, and this is helpful with that responsible use piece. If you want to go ahead to the first one. There are 4 main ways I've talked about documenting. The first one is a boilerplate statement. All of these are in your resource guide, so don't feel like you've got to read through them right now. I like the boilerplate statement because you put it front and center in the syllabus and say, hey, this is how we're going to acknowledge which tools we used, how we used it, and how we modified the content to reflect our own creativity and critical thinking. I've also linked to our academic integrity policy in case there's any doubt about, you know, are we getting off path here? The next one is a personal reflection. And so this is a little bit looser because you just ask students to write a reflective piece about your experience using AI tools in the assignment. I include that affirmation statement that says, I affirm I've taken all necessary steps to ensure the originality and accuracy of the material, again, linking to our academic integrity policies. A more extensive option would be using the prompt appendix. The prompt appendix is appropriate if you really want to dig deep into how that student is interacting with the AI. And so they might say, this is what I prompted, this was the output, this is how I modified it, or continued the dialogue to get the eventual output that I want. The last one includes some discipline-specific guidelines. And so the APA has specific guidelines, even specifically on ChatGPT. MLA has some guidelines. MLA actually has a task force working on this. Chicago Manual of Style has offered some. But even if your discipline doesn't have a specific citation format, you can use, you know, this ethical consideration statement or use limitation statement. What I'm seeing now, though, is this isn't quite covering all the use cases. So if you move to the next slide, I'm seeing that some people are questioning, is AI a citable source? The confusion arises because the APA, which is used not just in psychology, but widely as a way to cite things, are we citing sources here? What are we citing exactly? And so I've seen a move recently. Laura Duman talked about this not too long ago, about instead of citing what the AI is outputting, using a different colored font or highlighting exactly what the chatbot has said. And so you can see in that second paragraph there, I pulled verbatim the purple font. And then in the parentheses, I have my own unique contribution to explain, hey, this is what I saw. And this will help us rather than trying to say, hey, I used 20% AI, 80% me. It makes it very transparent what the student has used as far as AI is concerned. And so what we had hoped to do was to take all these ideas and put them into action. And so I will leave you with this now. We wanted you to really think about, you know, what does it have you thinking about your own teaching? And so we want you to stop and think about, how does this foster creativity, facilitate critical thinking? How can you personalize learning opportunities, or is this too big of an ask yet? How can you enhance student collaboration? What's unique to your field? And so I would encourage you to do this on your own. These prompts are in that resource guide. And then once you do that, put those ideas into action. So pick an assignment to work on, experiment with it, collaborate with a partner or a small group. You know, misery loves company. We're all figuring this out. We don't have to do it alone, which is why I do these free seminars so that we can all come together and work on this. And then try using AI to generate case studies. This is especially important for like biology and nursing, where wouldn't it be nice to have case studies without personally identifiable information? Design a student activity that encourages critical thinking. So double down on critical thinking is why you're here. This is how we're going to teach it. And hey, surprise, we're going to use AI to do it. And then draft your own syllabus statement on AI use. We've linked to Lance Eaton's Aggregation of all the syllabi policies, do like Emily did, go into that and find some that meet your needs. So eventually, we had hoped to bring it all together and, share out what you all discovered in your discussion and in your work time, but because we had so many wonderful questions, I wasn't going to shut that down. So do we have any final questions before we bid you good day? I'm not seeing any questions. If you all do have questions later, feel free to reach out either to myself or to Emily. We are happy to help you along in this journey. We've been experimenting and discovering, and we would love to hear about your concerns, your successes. And if not, we do have a Spark Talk on the same topic on Wednesday. So if you weren't able to make it to this one and you'd like to ask questions in real time, join us on Wednesday at 2 p.m. If you all received an email advertising this, or if you saw it from LinkedIn, I will be posting all that information again, so you can sign up for the Spark Talk on Wednesday. Thank you all so very much. And
Thank you so much.